Hello, and welcome to that Eurovision podcast, Eurovision with a Slice of Life. My name is Rory, and I am very tired. My neck, my back are all cracked, and I'm not going to carry on with that lyric, okay? But yes, no. If you haven't seen, we were so fortunate enough to actually meet so many of the team, really, back at Manchester Calling, where it all began, and it was so much fun. And fully believe that I don't know, given myself some form of like neck damage that's going to be incurable. Who knows? But yeah, I'm just really ready to get into this. So yeah, joining me.
Jazzy, I am so tired again because I went out and met everybody on Saturday, but also because I've been trying to watch as much Olympic coverage as I can. So I've been up since 7 o'clock this morning to watch GB. So I am tired, but I am
I'm tired.
I'm excited to get into today's topic. I may be a little bit controversial in this one.
Hi, it's Rosie. Once again, also echoing the tiredness sentiment, but otherwise, I'm doing really, really well. If you haven't checked out our Twitter feed from the weekend, please definitely do that because you get to see Rory doing his rendition of Shum, and it's incredible. It is truly incredible, and
Aww.
everyone needs to go and see it
And I mean,
because
your version of Zero Gravity as well, absolutely stellar. Just saying.
hey, well, if for those of you who don't know Manchester Calling, they do a sort of karaoke competition, and Rory and I took first and second place. So basically, it's that Eurovision podcast supremacy.
Literally, like Manchester Calling literally just said TES rights, okay?
They really did. But yes, definitely check out our Twitter. My voice still hasn't quite recovered after hitting those high notes twice and then just yelling along to everything, but so worth it.
Hey everyone, it's Helen, and I was so excited because I also got to go out to Manchester Calling and meet all of you guys for the first time in person. It was also the
Woo!
first trip I've taken since I think about a year ago, so it was a lot. But I had a super, super, super good time, and I'm glad I got to meet all of you and cheer you guys all on. And like Jazzy, I have also been doing a lot of Olympics watching, mostly gymnastics, and I have a lot of opinions on that, but that's not for this podcast. That's more from my Twitter feed. So
I think maybe Helen should start an Olympics podcast, and it's only dominated by only gymnastic things that happen, and you make that that content last for 4 years in between the actual Olympics.
oh my God, separating like the 4-year fans from the diehard ones has been real interesting.
Literally. Anyway, yes. So we obviously have been so happy to see each other again, but alas, we were unable to properly record this until now. So but we will make a do with it, and we are going to treat you, dear listener, with a really, really, really interesting topic, and that is we're going to go do another year retrospective, and that is going to be, well, I guess the best way to explain it is, have you guys got your towels? Because it's time to come together. Look, if Petra Meda can say it, so can I, okay? No, it's been a really, really, it's 2016. There's no denying that it really has been one of the most popular years in recent memory. There were 42 countries that were taking part. Portugal and Romania decided to bow out, one of whom voluntarily, one of whom because they didn't pay their rent, but okay. And four countries returned following different things. So, Ukraine, after 1 year of an absence, we had Croatia return since 2013, as was with Bulgaria. And then also we had Bosnia and Herzegovina participating for the first time since 2012, which was so nice because, it's when do we ever get to hear about Bosnia and Herzegovina now? Like, it's I think we're definitely due a country episode of Bosnia at some point soon. So if you like that, let us know. Yes, so the winner of the 2016 contest was Jamala, 1944, representing Ukraine. And with that, Ukraine became the first country from the Soviet bloc, per se, to actually win the contest more than once. So I think that definitely goes to show that Ukraine really knew what they were doing. Yeah, I guess we should just get the ball rolling on this. Like, so what are your sort of memories of 2016 if you were watching it at that time, or, looking back on it, do you think it was a good year, or, what are your thoughts?
2016 is a really difficult one for me because the show itself is so high quality. Petra and Mars are such amazing hosts, but there's something about 2016 I like it, but I don't love it. I don't know whether it's the quality of the songs, because again, there's no song that I'm like, oh, I love this. I want to stand this with all my heart. It just falls a little bit flat for me, and I don't know whether it's to do with the fact that it was a busy period of my life in regards to it was my first year at university, or not a year that really resonates with me, although I can really appreciate that it is a high quality year and Sweden put on an amazing show, but there's something about it that I just can't love. I like it, and there's nothing I really dislike about the show.
I feel like for me, 2016 is quite polarizing in that the songs that I love, I really love. And the songs that I don't take to, I really don't take to. I liked that there were countries that tried to do something that was a bit different. I liked that there were countries that sent some riskier entries. We saw quite a strong diversity of genre as well. We had quite a lot of rock music. I think probably the song that stands out to me the most in terms of experimentalism is Utopian Land from Greece, which is one of those sorts of songs that I respect a lot. And I like the fact that it was in Eurovision, but I don't really like the song itself that much. It's a year, yeah, I think that's probably a good way of describing it. It's a year that I have a lot of respect for. And obviously the hosting was fantastic. And I mean, we can't do this episode without talking about Love, Love, Peace, Peace, of course. And that has become a defining moment of Eurovision fans of our sort of generation, really. But as a year, some of it I adore, especially the music. Some of the music is amongst my favorite Eurovision music of all time. There are a few songs that really don't do it for me that year.
So 2016 is an interesting one for me. For one, it's the first Eurovision that I watched in a group setting. I was actually studying in the UK at that point, and it was actually 2 days before I was due to head back to the States. But I corralled some of my friends who were attending a youth group that was hosting a Eurovision party into taking me, even though I'd never been. And it was fun being in like the room of everybody who kind of knew what it was. It was also the last year before I really got into being a Eurovision like junkie. So I'd only watched the final, and it was really funny because I did know who Alexander Rybak was. And it was funny watching everybody in the room scream when he popped up during Love, Love, Peace, Peace. And I think I kind of knew who Rory was too. But that was like, after that point, I really started doing my research. But I have to say, I don't remember much about the contests. I have rewatched it since, just out of boredom during the pandemic. It's something I can put on. And I think I kind of feel a bit the same as Jazzi on this one, because I don't necessarily think there was anything technically wrong with it, but the word that comes to mind for me is, this is going to be controversial, a bit bland. Like it's we talk about Swedish entries all the time being a bit too kind of mainstream poppy and a bit basic and a bit boring, and I feel like that kind of energy extended to the contest as a whole. I will say that Mons and Petra were excellent hosts. They were by far the best aspect of being able to watch But this was also when they really started trying to make a push for Americans to start watching it. They had American commentators for the first time, which I didn't get to hear because I was over in the UK. And by the sound of it, I don't think I missed much. Michelle and Carson. And they had Justin Timberlake as the interval act with his song from Trolls, which was a choice. And the Americans didn't even get to see that because of rights reasons. So it was, oh man, I do appreciate Love, Love, Peace, Peace, but I feel like that really marked the end of an era of Eurovision, because an hour later we had Jamala winning, and that kind of started a trend of what started to win Eurovision going forward.
Yeah, there's definitely no denying that 2016 really sort of marked, like, it was the transition period to like a whole new, like, what we're experiencing now, really. And that sort of, it's the typical trope for this podcast at this point. We might as well just call ourselves the Authenticity Podcast. But like, you know, from here on in, you could see that there were more sort of homegrown people, like the artists writing their own music, all that kind of stuff. My memories of the actual final are so fun because I went to I actually went to the UK on the day of the actual final, and I was fortunate enough to actually go and watch it with another Eurovision fan at Jameson Sayer, which he's a lovely guy. So he was in university. I was only like 17 or something like that. But it was just so much fun. And we both had absolutely been standing Jamala. And so we were so, so happy when we worked it out that basically Jamala had won in at the end of the night. And literally, I think everyone was just like dead silent for when like she was actually doing her reprise. And it was just so nice, you know, and just really fitting. I have to kind of echo what the sentiments of everyone else, though, in saying that with the exception of like a couple, like maybe like 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 6 at a push, a lot of the songs I really don't listen to anymore. And I would go as far to say that 2016 is a pretty much, like, looking back on it, it is a rather mediocre year. A lot of the songs were somewhat diverse, but there was still a very heavy pop element in there. And I do think that is partly reflected in, you know, because Mons won the year before, and so they wanted to like replicate the winning formula, and then that's the reason why we managed to get Jamala winning, because it was just so like such an end to this whole manufactured pop thing. And actually, let's just sit down and have a conversation about an actual, you know, normal music that's being produced by the person that, you know, is singing it. Overall, though, I mean, the stage itself was phenomenal. The production was faultless. And I mean, it's been hammered in already, but Petra and Mons, I absolutely adore as a hosting duo. They knew when to bounce off of each other. And we knew that Petra was like this anyway when she hosted in 2013. But then obviously we hadn't really had that kind of side of Mons, because obviously he was just a singer. And then all of a sudden he was now being thrust into the other side of things. I definitely think it really worked well for them. And, you know, it was slick and it was just really good. But that's just what we kind of come to expect from Sweden nowadays, isn't it? So was it really par for the was it really that innovative, or was it really par for the course? You know, like, But enough about the production. We need to get into the songs, really. Like I said, we had 2 countries withdrawing, one of which was not by their own volition, and then 4 countries returning as well. So who were your top 3, and like what did it work in terms of the actual top 3? Like, what did you make of the overall results?
For me, I like 2 out of 3 of the top 3. I like Russia and I like Ukraine. If you've been listening to the podcast for the last year, I'm not going to say any more on Australia 2016. I think I've said enough. You can go watch the Australia episode. I say it all there. I do not like the song. I never have and I never will. I was at that point where I didn't care who won out of Jamala or Sergey. I was just happy that it wasn't the outcome I'd been thinking it was going to be, because I think I do have to give credit to Dami Eam and the staging and her vocals. They were amazing. It's the issue that I have with Sound of Silence is nothing to do with Dami herself. I think she's better than that song. Looking back, I'm very happy Jamala won over Sergei, because I think Jamala's win set a precedent for like this modern era of Eurovision. And I think if Sergei had won, I don't want to say it would have been a couple of steps backwards and we'd have fallen into some more dated songs in Eurovision, but I'm going to say it anyway. Yeah, I definitely think Jamala winning was the best thing for the contest, and I wasn't too. I didn't dislike her song. It was more in my mid-teens in 2016, but it's definitely in my top 10 now. I just didn't 100% get it in 2016, and that's why it was mid-table for me. My personal top three were Cyprus, Lithuania, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. That song, Le Bavier, does not deserve to be Bosnia and Herzegovina's only non-qualifier and their worst result, because that song was so different and so kind of really experimental, mixing the Balkan and the rap. So different to anything else that was in the contest, and kind of different to anything we've really seen before in the contest. And I definitely think we should have seen it in the final. Yes, I know a lot of people say the outfits were questionable, but I don't think that should be a reason for a song to not qualify. But I guess we saw this again the following year with Switzerland and Apollo, which again didn't qualify because of the horrendous dress she was wearing. Maybe it also started setting a precedent for what you wear matters, because ultimately it was the juries again that put Bosnia and Herzegovina out. I think the tally vote did have them in the final, so I can't quite remember, but I think they did. Cyprus is just your typical rock song that I would always go for. I think it is an amazing song. I think the production on it is amazing. I don't necessarily think the live was the best live, and I was kind of just let down and disappointed by it. I still love the song and I still listen to it now. And Lithuania was just a happy bop for me, and I enjoy it. I think like I found the word to describe 2016 song quality, and that's kind of indifferent, because there's nothing I really hate in 2016 either.
So I'm possibly quite lucky in that 2016 was the last time my winner won. So that's great. And honestly, 1944 is in my top 5 songs of all time from Eurovision. I know Rory also thinks the same. He is nodding along on the video camera right now. I just think there is something so ethereal and transcendent about it that there is a sort of moment of magic I get watching it, where sort of everything sort of drops away, and there's just that moment where she's standing on stage and the tree is sort of exploding behind her, and it is just stunning and it's breathtaking for me. I can't not just like burst every time I see it, basically. And her vocals were just incredible. My second place of the year is definitely a controversial one. I know this is one that ends up in a lot of people's 40-second spot. And it's very much a genre thing. So my second place of 2016 is Georgia with Midnight Gold. I love that sort of music. It sounds like it could have come out of the Manchester Britpop scene in the 90s. It's the sort of music I grew up on, and I think it's a great example of that music. And honestly, like, the UK jury did a good thing when they gave that their 12 points. I'm not actually sure how much I'm allowed to say about this, but I went on Pointless a few months ago and mentioned on there that I was a Eurovision fan, and Richard Osman was talking to me about presenting the points in 2016. So that was fucking cool. Also, my third place is possibly also a controversial one, and possibly a controversial artist as well. So my third place is actually Croatia, Nina Kralic with Lighthouse. I know she's kind of got big into the 5G conspiracy stuff recently, which is not problematic enough to make me cancel her because I don't think it's genuinely harming anyone, but it is definitely woo and very weird. And also, like, yes, the performance on the night wasn't necessarily amazing, but she stepped on stage with a chest infection and still managed to belt out that. So absolute mad props to her. I think it was staged beautifully. I liked the costume. I know that I'm pretty certain it won Barbara Dex that year, but I thought it was really effective and very different and very memorable. And again, really captured that sort of etherealness of the song. And I love her voice. I love that sort of beautiful, unique tone of voice she has. And I love listening to her. Like, I have the same feelings about Rijeka from this year as well. I'm just really drawn to that style of music. So giving some love to a few of the underappreciated entries. Just to give a few other shout outs. Spain with Say Yay, great song, deserved much better. Eusts with Heartbeat, be a song called Heartbeat if you want to be a song I love, like Ireland 2014, Latvia 2016, You Done Good. Again, probably not a controversial one. Amir from France with J'ai Cherché. Probably the best blending of languages I've ever seen in a Eurovision song. So well done. And what a gorgeous voice he's got. And what a beautiful man he is.
Is this where Rosie yet again says, "Step on me, please"?
I'm full of surprises.
I don't know if I'm the only one in this camp, but because I wasn't like huge into Eurovision at that point, the first time I heard any of the songs for 2016 was when I was watching the broadcast. So a lot of my memories are specifically tied to the visual presentation. I'm glad you mentioned Georgia because that was one that really, really stood out. A lot of my friends thought that was weird. I also want to give a shout out to Poland with Color of Your Life. We were quoting that for a while afterwards. But it was just so exciting, specifically for him when they started, doing the televote and they hadn't announced him yet. And we were like, okay. And that was also, I think that was the first year that we had the split voting. And it was really interesting to see that play out because I think, we saw everybody who was on the bottom of the board after the jury and we were like, okay, so they're probably not going to, that's probably where they'll stay. And then they kept going and going and they hadn't announced him yet. And I think that was probably one of the first times, at least on the broadcast, that we really saw the disparity between the jury and the public vote. And it was so wonderful to see him get such a good result. I think he ended up 4th overall. Definitely top 10 for sure. But
He came 8th overall.
8th, okay.
Yeah.
Don't know where I got 4th from. It's a multiple of 4. It's fine.
Same thing.
Russia as well, I think, was really good. But my first thought when I saw Sergei Lazarov was I thought it was like Lionel Messi. There is a resemblance, but the song was very good, I thought, and also just still to this day, I get moments when I'm watching it of, is he actually like climbing the thing or is he like behind and whatever? Because what they were able to do visually with that was kind of take what Mons had done the previous year and like step it up to 10. I don't know. And that's one that I think comes up and it's definitely Sergei's superior Eurovision entry. For me, I thought Scream was just fine in 2019. But I do agree that Jamala definitely deserved her win. They really played it right with picking the clip to show in the recaps, because that moment with the note and the tree is just so powerful. And for them to come back after having a year off and being able to come away and win the whole thing was just, it was so much fun to watch. I don't know if I have any other ones because, again, I haven't really gone back and listened to any of them since I've watched, I have a much stronger attachment to songs that from like 2017 onwards. But that's just kind of going off of what I can remember.
For once, there's an actual 2017 stan on the podcast like me! Woo! Jazzi and Rosie are just shaking in their boots right now. Um, my number one was Jamala. I think, if you listen to the Ukraine episode, you would have known very, very quickly that I fell in love with this song from the moment I first heard it, all the way back. Like, it literally came out, like, I think 2 days after my birthday in February. And I thought, oh my God, like, I'm gonna listen to this, and this is immediately going to like go way, way higher. And then she went through Vidbeer, went through the final, had everything, had all of the drama being like, will she compete? Will she not compete? And then the whole thing with the dress, and then getting to Stockholm and actually being there, and like it's a tiring experience alone, like let alone trying to like talk about such a like a personal story. She literally said in every interview that she cried after every performance. So I'm not surprised, you know. But yeah, I was over the moon when Jamala won. I'm so happy. I preferred Jamala way more than Sergey. I was okay with Dami, but like I do think people were kind of overhyping her a little bit. Same way with Sergey. I thought people were just kind of being sucked in by the visuals as opposed to listening to the quality of the song. Mostly just because, we were starting to get into that kind of area of like people sort of just producing general kind of manufactured pop. And that would have just carried on that sort of rut. And then, we would have just basically, say for example, if Sergey won, I think only now we would be having like a proper like Jamala moment now. So I think it definitely was the right idea to have Jamala win. So Jamala was number one, so I was over the moon with that. My second place was Czech Republic. I stand Gabriela Gončíková. I love that song. It's a kind of a really weird one for me. Now, this is entirely a me thing, so like if you don't understand where I'm coming from, apologies. But I always get kind of like a little bit messed up in terms of the time signatures in the song a little bit, just because like in like say for example in the first chorus, like she goes from silence to dun 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 dun. But like when you hear it, I don't know, there's something that goes wrong in my mind anyway, but I loved the staging for this. I think they like Czech Republic staged this so beautifully. And the fact that this was their first ever qualification as well, I think, it just gave them the fire to know that like actually these things are possible. I definitely don't think it deserves 0 points in the televote. I think that was absolutely unjustified when literally Malta was right there. But, I'm not going to get into why I don't like Walk on Water and Malta. And then, so here's the thing. My number 3 at the time was Croatia. And I liked it because it was very much that sort of style of Balkan ballad, but like adapted to a poppy version. Since then, it has changed. And it has already been mentioned already. It is Greece. I love it. And I love it in the same way that I loved Ziareftot, for example. Like it plays around with time signatures. It's so ethnically strong. Like you can tell that is a Greek entry. And I think a lot of people were sleeping on it. And I'm not a person that's into rap at all. At all. Like you could literally, saying that, Russian Woman was my number 1 this year, but we don't talk about that. I just think that it was just presented really, really well. And for this to be Greece's first non-qualification, I think that was mental, 2016 in general was just a really, really strong year. Looking at some of the other ones that we haven't mentioned so far, like Bulgaria was an absolute amazing song. Belgium, phenomenal. I like fantastic. Armenia as well, great way to close the show. Even though I think she was a little bit off key towards the end, and I think people have started to shag her a little bit too much. And as well as that, I have to give shout out to Georgia as well, just because that was such a good staging. I mean, when it first came out in the national final, it was like, because the song itself was like already 5 minutes, so they had to cut it down to 3 minutes, which obviously, how the hell are you going to do that? But then they went into the studio, changed it, and we got the masterpiece that we have today. So it's definitely a good one, and I'm just like the songs that I like from 2016, I love, but like everything else is just very like throwaway to me. But yeah, so like the next thing I guess we should kind of talk about is, we've said it already. This was the first year that things sort of changed in terms of the voting. So, this was the first time that we had the split votes actually being equally weighted essentially without having to be combined. At the time, it was seen to be very controversial because people were saying, oh, they're trying to make it too much like Melodifestival, and oh, it's just very much like it's just becoming a Sweden produced contest. And now that we've kind of gotten acclimatized to it, do you think it was a good idea in retrospect, or do you think we should still stay with, the combined thing that we had from 1975 to 2015?
I prefer the voting the way it is now because I think between 2013 and 2015, they announced the winner before the voting had even finished, and it was like, oh, okay. The way the voting's done like now, I know it's changed a bit again since where they reveal. I think it changed again in 2019, but more on that later. It just makes it more exciting, and you don't know the winner until at the end of the contest, and I think it really works. I think there's been some issues with it, but that's mainly on production side, and I don't think this was really as much of an issue in Sweden. I think this is more an issue in the Netherlands and somewhat Israel, where if they got a low televote score or they got a low jury score, they would show the participants' faces, and I don't think that's a good thing to do. I just think they you don't need to embarrass them. This was definitely an issue in the Netherlands. They show people who on screen who got 0 points on the televote, and I don't think that's right. Not so much an issue in Sweden, which is a good thing.
I think I really like having the split votes, and I think giving that sort of equal prominence to the jury and to the televote is really nice. I do think that there are obviously sort of issues with how the jury vote runs, and that there needs to be more diversity and much more sort of stringent sort of regulation in terms of what the jury vote for and how they vote, and sort of safeguards on that. I do think, again, this is not a Sweden 2016 thing. This is a sort of more recent thing, I think. What I don't like, as well as what Jazzi said of them sort of putting the camera close in the faces of people who don't necessarily do as well as you possibly would have liked to do, I don't like how it gives it sort of stops people from getting their moment if they do well in the televote. And I remember that so strongly with Kano in 2019. The fact that they actually won the televote, but they were announced so early because they didn't do especially well with the juries, that actually it stops them getting recognized and getting that sort of validation that they were the most popular amongst the televoters throughout Europe. I think that is something that is incredible and worth recognizing. So I possibly would have liked to see it instead done in sort of televote order. So bottom in the televote, second bottom in the televote, and then going up to winner of the televote, rather than just giving points to the winner of the jury vote final as the last thing instead.
I'm going to say that in 2016, the way they changed it really worked. When they've changed it again in 2019, it doesn't work as well.
I have to agree. I definitely prefer them going in the order of the televote first. for one, there's a bit more suspense as to like whose points they're going to announce, which I think I prefer. On the other hand, and I think maybe they changed it in part because in 2016 there was quite a bit of suspense, but then we had a situation in 2017 where there was pretty much no question as to who was going to win. I think the only tension was maybe Bulgaria would have gotten a higher televote, but I think it was very, very clear from the jury vote, from I think a lot of the press leading up to the 2017 final, that there was a lot of love on Portugal's side. And it was a very good song, but you also had the media's, he had this health condition, and it would have, Portugal was the longest participating country who hadn't yet won at that point. It was just a perfect storm. 2018 was an interesting one. I think there was a lot of suspense in there, but then we had a situation where nobody expected Austria to be atop of the jury board, and we're like, could they win this? And then they had a very low televote score, not as low as Sweden's, but I do prefer that, actually, now that we've had 2 years of announcing it in jury order. I think it was really unbearably cruel this year they never could have predicted it going into the night, that we would have 4 nul point televote countries, or that someone could score nul point overall, but it only took 5 years. But it really was just, I guess from a technical standpoint, then what country you're going to be on, so maybe it made things easier on production as to what camera they needed to cut to. But at the same time, it was just kind of, we got to Norway, and I was so worried for Tix. Truly, the most soul-crushing moment was seeing Jean-Good get no points, because that absolutely did not deserve it. I do think they should go back to doing it in televote order as well. It was, as sad as it was to see countries get such a low televote score, I'm thinking of Austria in 2017, I quite liked that. But I think it's probably the most fair way you can do it, because if they were worried about maybe a runaway winner, I don't think we've had that since Portugal. It's still a very young system comparatively, especially when you consider that the previous system had been in place for, I think, 30 plus years at that point, almost 40. So I think really only time will tell if this was the right decision.
Yeah, I think the issue was, obviously before 2016, we were getting to that point where at least in 2013, 2014, and in 2015, that the winner was always announced before the voting had finished. So, I think there was like 4 countries left in 2013. There was like 4 countries left in 2014. Sorry, 13, 14, there was like 4 countries left. And then I think there was like 7 countries left after 2015. So there definitely was a need for it to change. Looking back on it, I definitely think that the televote order was by far and away the better approach to go around this, because, look how it was in 2018, for example. So like, or even 2017 as well, to be fair, because look at how low Australia's televote scores were, for example, and they were storming it in the jury vote. So I think Australia was like 5th in the jury vote, and then they literally only got 2 televote points in 2017. I think they were 9th in 2018. I could be wrong there. I think they were like 9th in 2018, but then they literally only got 9 points. They literally got like the least amount of votes. So, but then when things changed in 2019, it just seemed very like, okay, so we're just going up the list now and just saying like, okay, right, whatever. It did take a bit of the suspense out of things, and I do think it might be worth maybe checking out now that we have a new executive supervisor, Martin Oosterdal. He may potentially maybe reinstate some of the things that Jan Olasand was putting in towards the end. But I do think, looking back on it, it definitely was the right idea to change the system, because I think at this point it was starting to get a little bit static. So to kind of inject a little bit of suspense, I think that was definitely the right idea to do, but maybe they just should have stopped at 2016 as opposed to keeping it going in 2019, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I would like to see the thing done, but how likely is that? I don't really know. But yeah, so just kind of like wrap things up. I'm not gonna do wrap up things up again. Not after last week.
Wrong year.
No. But no, basically to kind of like wrap things up a little bit, do you think going forward, what should Sweden take from what they learned from hosting in 2016?
I think they really should have a look, not necessarily maybe at what they did in 2016, but what host nations have done since then, because I feel like even the way that it's hosted now has kind of gone against that. There's a lot of national identity in the hosting of the contest recently. I think because we've had a lot of countries either winning for the first time or winning for the first time in a while, so they're really taking the opportunity to show off their culture. And maybe they didn't need to do that so much in 2016 because they just won like 3 years prior. But I think there wasn't really a lot of personality to it. And I think there was a lot more focus on the overall production as opposed to maybe the contestants. I know a lot of people say they like the stage, but for me, it was so big looking back on it. And it really kind of swallowed the artists up. And clearly, the Swedish delegation wasn't really into it because they brought their own LEDs for their singer. I think especially now, combined with the types of scores that they're getting, they are falling down the leaderboard a bit in recent years. I think they, not to be, continuing in the theme of authenticity, but I do think they need to really have a look at like, you know, what really constitutes, what Swedish entries are now, because I think what people think of as a Swedish entry is a little bit outdated. There were a lot of Melfest entries at the party the other night. Um, but I don't know. I think they really should take these past few years and the way that it's gone and do some changing up of what they've done in the past.
I don't want to say that they pander to America, but I think out of any country in Eurovision, Sweden are probably the most guilty of this. And
Fully agree on that.
like even more guilty than the UK. The contest felt quite Americanized in the way that it was produced, the way Justin Timberlake was there. I think they just frustrate me because I think Sweden have so much talent and they go with these songs that you would hear out of the American charts over and over again. It's time for Sweden to I do think Sweden have a lot of talent. We see that in Melfest. We do see the authentic talent in Melfest. It never does well, and I just think it's a shame. Yeah, they're a frustrating country because I think they have the ability to do well on their own, but they're quite obsessed with this idea of getting America involved in the contest, pleasing America, and I don't understand why.
I would point you towards there's an episode of a show called This Is Pop on Netflix that specifically focuses on the Swedish songwriting and how it came to dominate the American charts. And I think you've hit it on the head. They really are like really trying to appeal to America, because if you think about Swedish songwriters who are huge but don't do Belfast, you've got like your Max Martins, your Shellback, and we think the reason that it sounds so much like American music is because that is what American music is now.
Both countries are guilty. It's not like, oh, this is all on Sweden. Like, I feel like America have always wanted to be part of the contest. It's just Sweden are the ones that have opened the door for that. And I don't know whether it's a good thing or not.
I think one of the things that Sweden as hosts did very right, and that we've definitely seen more of in the contest since as well, is sort of interval acts that are very focused on the fans and things that the fans want to see. Love, Love, Peace, Peace was obviously the sort of codifier of that. And then since then we had that whole skit in Ukraine of Mons trying to teach the three presenters how to host the contest. Obviously we've had the Switch song, we had Rock the Roof, we had the rooftop thing in Rotterdam, again getting all of these old acts back. And honestly, as a fan of the contest, I love that sort of shit. I love it. It's so much fun. And it feels accessible to people who are not sort of prior fans of the contest, who might be watching for the first time, who might be just very casual fans, who aren't the sort of people that are going to remember that Ukrainian act that came second in 2007, except that was a really bad example because Verka is unforgettable. But I think it does get that balanced really, really right. And I have really enjoyed seeing that in the sort of years that have come since. That was a really great thing that I think has come out of Sweden's hosting time. As well as that, it's kind of a tricky thing to say without sounding like an absolute dick. But I think one of the things we did get in 2016 is you can definitely see a difference when the host presenters are comfortable speaking English. And I feel like a right dick for saying that because I am an English person. English is my first language. And I do speak a little bit of other languages, but the whole attitude that this country has towards other languages and learning other languages is utterly awful. And I don't want to make it sound like everyone should be speaking English, everyone has to be comfortable speaking English. I just think that you could really tell in the sort of jokes that they made, in the interactions they had as hosts, that they were just very comfortable on stage and very comfortable speaking a multitude of languages. I mean, they were doing French as well. And I think that's probably something for countries to take into account when they decide who is going to be the hosts. But I also don't want to say that in such a way that it prevents them from having people who are very much of that culture, of that nationality. Like I wouldn't want Italy to just choose the sort of easiest English speaking people they have in their presenterdom. I would like it to be people who are great presenters first and foremost, but if they can speak English, it does make for a sort of easier time of things as a viewer. And I think you do get something that is, yeah, it's more comfortable to watch, I think. And honestly, it's just nice to see the hosts relaxed and having a good time. Again, you could really tell the difference this year, where in the Netherlands, the vast majority of the population speak English, versus sort of the Ukrainian hosting, which has been quite heavily criticized. And probably the Portuguese hosts are quite a good split, because we had sort of Philomena, who is very accomplished, very confident speaking English, whereas some of the other hosts weren't necessarily quite so comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I was literally just about to say, look at how Filomena and Daniela were. Like, they were by far and away the people with the best banter compared to, Katerina and Sylvia. They were the kind of like more reluctant ones, but they were still able to kind of get the jokes across, but just in a more professional way, I think is the right way of saying it. But yeah, I think, going forward, it is definitely like picking the right presenters is definitely like what should be taken from Sweden 2016 and then carried on, not only just from other countries, but also like within Sweden itself. We have seen so many different types of presenters there, like Sarah Dawn Finer, Gina Dirawi, Eric Saade, like so many people. If I can remember any of the other ones, then that would be great, but I can't remember any at the moment, so alas. But these kinds of people that are like young, fresh, like happy to like just kind of be a little bit more risky. I think that they're a lot more interesting. And like being able to have this kind of competence in English when English is pretty much the lingua franca of Eurovision. It is, I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but it definitely would be desirable. But yeah, other things to take from Sweden 2016, just relax, to be honest, because it if even though like the show itself went on for like the final went on for about 4 hours, they did have a lot like of stuff that did kind of help to break it up, I guess, so that was a bit more interesting. So we had Love Love Peace Peace, we had Justin Timberlake, we had the Vicious sketch that we haven't even talked about, even though like it literally has Derek Jacobi and Serene McKellen, like hello, royalty. But it was a bit of, I will say it was a bit of a random choice just to put that in, especially because it's only the UK that would know what that is, as opposed to someone in, say, like Azerbaijan, for example. So maybe, not so much looking outwards, but maybe so celebrating what's there. It's kind of in a similar vein to what Israel was criticized for in 2019, by getting Madonna in as opposed to getting other kind of famous Israeli people such as like, Dana International again, but like, they were getting people who were very big abroad as opposed to people who were big in Israel. So then you don't know what their actual culture was. So maybe that might be something that both Sweden and Israel can take going forward or something. But yeah, I definitely do think though it was a very high quality thing, and maybe if it wasn't so much of an internationalized show on that sense, which is ironic because it literally just flies in the face of the ethos of the whole contest. But it's definitely worth, like, you're hosting your the contest, show off your culture kind of thing. That's why Swedish Smorgasbord was so much fun in 2013. But yeah, so do we have any sort of like final points just before we wrap things up?
I think I've finally been able to put it into words, which is in that particular contest, from the emphasis on getting American performers to not doing the postcards in Sweden, but doing them in the home countries. I think that was the case anyways. But it really felt like they were afraid of their own Swedishness, which I get that I think they had done a bit more of Swedish culture in the 2013 contest that they literally like just hosted. So it's like, do you want to go throughout that all again? But then you have people like me who had never watched the contest before and didn't really get much of the culture. So I really wish that I want them to send an entry in Swedish. I want to, see more of their culture through their songs. I don't want them to be afraid of their own Swedishness. I want to see more. Be more yourself.
Renner, I'm a ding dong for Eurovision 2022, yeah?
I think just
Yes.
echoing on from what Helen said, I think this hasn't just been a problem through their hosting, but this has been a problem with their entries since they hosted in 2016 as well. And their televote scores have kind of reflected that. Like, we don't want in Eurovision the songs that you just hear on the charts every single day. We don't want it. And it's definitely been reflected in some of Sweden's televote scores. Hence, I think that's why they did a little bit better this year in the televote, because it wasn't so much, oh, this is just something that you see here in the charts every single day. Tusa's performance was a little bit different, was a little bit more, had a little bit more personality in it than, say, the previous entries had. Hence why I think Tusa did a little bit better in the televote than the previous Swedish entries have done. So they're going in the right direction, but they need to do more.
Yeah, I
All
definitely.
I have to say is that Iceland deserved better.
It really did. Ugh. I am standing for I stand. You know?
I stand.
That just sounds like you have a lisp, okay? Or like a stutter or something. But no, I mean the other thing that I just have to say is Linda Woodruff, I love you. I know it's Sarah Dawn Finer in a wig, but like I would die for Linda Woodruff. I'm telling you that now, okay? It's like, okay, to be fair, like it was a bit awkward when she did know how instead of knee how, but when she did America, where she was like, yo, that was funny. That was funny. Yeah, so yeah, that takes us to the end of this edition of That Eurovision podcast. I'd really like to thank Jazzi, Rosie, and Helen for, you know, rolling down memory lane. We've come together so far, and it's been so great. And yeah, in the meantime, follow us on all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at That Euro Site. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our YouTube channel as well. So please subscribe, follow, whatever, so you can always get notified for whenever new episodes come out. And yeah, I mean, we are ready. Also, I mean, just it's going to be a great time. And I also have another thing that we should be saying. Bear with a moment. I have to get it up on our chat. Um, our awards for Eurovision 2021 are also going to be open very soon. They will be released, they will be open on the 1st of August, and they will be on for pretty much the majority of August, and we will release the results at the end of the month. There will be a Google form that's going to be pretty much ready to go. Maybe when this comes out, maybe not. And we will, you know, if you click on there, you'll be able to find out, you know, you can vote in all of these categories. And yeah, we will release the results in either a podcast episode or an article that has yet to be decided, but we will figure that out. Anyway, or both, to be fair, actually, that might be a good idea. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, in the meantime, shall we all say goodbye?
Bye.